The country of Niger is in the news for three reasons. The first reason, according to the Voice of America of March 31st, 2010, is because back in February, there was a military coup which overthrew a democratically elected government. The second reason, according to the same article, is because they are facing a huge hunger crisis right now. The article explains that the Republic of Niger requires at least $150 million in emergency food aid in order to solve their huge food crisis that they're facing. With over half of their 15 million population vulnerable to food shortage, this is an immediate problem that is facing the Republic of Niger right now. The third reason, well, the first two reasons are pretty obvious. You have an African nation which is facing a hunger crisis and has just having a chaotic government. That's new. But the third reason is new, because the article explains that Niger is not like most other African nations. Instead, it is the world's 8th largest exporter of uranium. Now, uranium is the central element that is used in nuclear reactors, both for energy purposes, but also for nuclear warheads, making it more valuable than gold pound for pound. So it's obvious. Niger can just sell all of its uranium resources, get the money needed, and solve the problem that they're facing in terms of their hunger crisis. Well, so we have to ask today's question. Is there a way for Niger to turn the uranium exports into a profitable means to solve the hunger crisis plaguing the country? And the answer to this question is no. Even though Niger has a lot of uranium ores, they simply do not have the government structure or infrastructure to convert it to solve their immediate problem of their hunger crisis. We will look at three key areas of analysis to understand why this is true. By first, understanding how the military junta is not popular. By second, exploring the corruption within the uranium industry. Before finally, understanding that there is no infrastructure within Niger to solve this problem. But first, we need to understand the military junta in Niger is not popular. The New York Times of April 8, 2010 explains that back in February, a military organization calling themselves the Supreme Council for the Restoration of Democracy overthrew a democratically elected president. How ironic is that? The problem here, according to the Los Angeles Times of April 8, 2010, is that it was not a very popular coup. Because unlike in most African nations, Niger had a relatively stable political system, with a president who was, even if not extremely popular, and to a certain degree corrupt, democratically elected. But it was not only the president who was democratically elected, but also members of the government who were democratically elected, meaning that the government in Niger was represented by the interests of the people. However, the military junta overthrew this popular government, and that attracted a lot of problems. The Wall Street Journal of April 8, 2010 explains that the old president, Miglo Tandja, was in very good terms with China. And now, after overthrowing his government, the Chinese have started to cold shoulder the country of Niger. The United States is not supportive of this military coup either, meaning that countries like these, which usually would have gobbled up the uranium resources available in Niger, but because they are not very on friendly terms with the government of Niger as it is right now, it means that the government of Niger simply cannot throw away this uranium, get the money immediately, and solve for the problem. The presence of a military junta instead of a democratically elected government reduces the ability of Niger to sell their uranium ores in the short term and convert it to money they need to solve for the problem of their hunger crisis. But the second reason is the corruption which exists within the uranium ore industry. Now, the uranium ore industry is a goose that keeps laying golden eggs for the country of Niger. However, the Los Angeles Times of April 6, 2010 explains that a lot of corruption exists within the industry, to the point where Reuters of April 8, 2010 explains that last week, 14 members of government, who are all heads of the state-run uranium ore company within Niger, were removed. Now, the military junta removed them because they were corrupt. Sadly, the article explains that there is no one else who is capable enough and clean enough to clean up this entire uranium ore industry. As a result, corruption continues to erode the uranium ore industry, and without cleaning up corruption, it'll be very hard for the country of Niger to quickly convert their uranium ores into cash that is required to solve their problem of hunger. Because even if they make profitable deals, what will happen is that all that money will be gobbled up by these corrupt heads of state rather than being used by the government to solve their humanitarian problems. But finally, we need to understand that the country of Niger does not have the infrastructure to effectively solve their crisis of hunger. As the New York Times of April 8, 2010 explains, there is a serious problem because there is no infrastructure to effectively distribute food aid even if it arrives. BBC of April 6, 2010 explains that even if magically $150 million worth of food aid was to be airdropped into Niger, there does not exist the infrastructure to effectively take this food and give it to people who need it. So the problem here, according to The Economist of April 8, 2010, is that only non-governmental organizations from all over the world can come in and provide this kind of expertise. The problem here is that you cannot throw uranium at non-governmental humanitarian organizations and ask them to come in and solve their problem. Unless they clean up their government structure, establish a democratically elected government, they will not be able to do this effectively. Therefore, when you look at the problem of lack of infrastructure, they cannot throw uranium at the organizations that are capable of solving their hunger crisis and hope to solve their problem in the short term. So we asked ourselves today's question, is there a way for Niger to turn their uranium exports into a profitable means to solve the hunger crisis plaguing the country? The answer is no. Because the government of Niger does not have a popular government in the world because of its military junta. There's a lot of corruption within the mineral ore industry, limiting its profitability. But finally, there is no infrastructure that can be created simply by selling off its uranium. We can understand that the country of Niger cannot solve its humanitarian aid simply by throwing uranium at the problem, but rather cleaning up their own government system, electing a government that is both popular but also clean.
Okay, very impressive for not getting time signals until 1 minute left.